Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Loretta. You can call me IJ. Welcome to my kitchen table. Okay, so I decided to do this as, yeah, just trial this series on my YouTube channel, on my channel, because I just felt like it's a good opportunity to kind of talk about the things that I like to talk about, intellectually stimulating, to have intellectually stimulating conversations, to talk about books, to talk about trends, make social commentary and things like that. So we'll see how we go. We'll see how we go, but I'm super excited to get this started on the channel. So yeah, if you're watching me for the first time, it feels weird saying watching me, but if you're watching this channel for the first time and you haven't subscribed, go ahead and subscribe. Do it. No, 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 no. Okay, and make sure you click on the notification bell so that you are notified whenever I, for now, whenever I have a new video up. Now you can see that I've got these books here because we're kicking off the kitchen table talking about what I'm reading. So for those of you who have been following the channel for a while, you know that I read. I like to read. I don't consider myself like a big reader. I don't think that I would consider myself like someone who's always reading. No, not that kind of a reader, but I enjoy reading, and I have this weird thing that I do. I read multiple books at the same time. If you're also like me, please leave a comment. I just want to check that I'm not the only person in the whole world who does this thing. But because for me, reading is not just ticking a box for me. Reading, I need to enjoy what I'm reading. So if I'm reading a book and I'm not getting, it's not giving, I might just drop it and pick up something else and then maybe come back to it later, or maybe not. Uh, but and also because I tend to read things based on my mood. So sometimes I might just need something to relax, so I pick up a book that will make me relax. I might just want to read something before I go to bed, so I might read something completely different to go to bed. I might just want to read something about a particular topic, and then I pick up something related to that. I pick up a book related to that topic, or I might just decide, to read something that's related to my career, to the workplace, and things like that. And then I pick up a book that talks about career stuff. So for me, reading is not about checking it off my list that, oh yeah, I read today. I need to enjoy it, and I need to have information that is useful. I need to be able to take something away that I can apply to myself, or maybe just generally just enjoy the book. Okay, so these are some of the books that I've been reading for a while now. I haven't finished any of them. I haven't finished any of them, but I'll just talk about them one after the other. So, starting with this book. This book is it's called Homegoing. Can you see it? It's called Homegoing by Yagiasi, and it's a historical fiction. Talks about a generation, two siblings that were separated, and generations after that, and talks about the slave trade. And it's set in partly in Ghana and partly in the United States. What I like about this book, there are a lot of things I like about the book, but first of all, I haven't read much literature from Ghana. I think this is the second book I'm reading from Ghana, or by a Ghanaian author. The first one was The Beautiful Ones Are Not Yet Born, I think. Yeah, and I read that many, many, many years ago as a child. It was one of those novels that my mom got for me as a child. I remember it was Ghanaian. So I haven't really read a lot of literature by Ghanaian authors. But as a Nigerian, you have to understand that Ghana and Nigeria are like siblings. So I have a soft spot for Ghana. I have a soft spot for Ghana. I have a soft spot for Ghanaians. In fact, Growing up, I used to have a tutor. We called them a lesson teacher. Back then, that was Ghanaian, and at some point, I started developing a Ghanaian accent, and my mother was like, "What's going on here?" And so, one of my favorite podcasters, Courtney, if you watch To My Sister's podcast, one of my favorite podcasts ever, best, one of the best podcasts in the world, To My Sisters. One of the hosts is Ghanaian. Courtney is Ghanaian, and I think Renee is Nigerian. Love them, but so I have a soft spot for Ghana. So yeah, as a Nigerian, so reading this book was an eye-opening experience to me because I didn't really know much about Ghanaian history. Of course, we have a shared history in terms of the slave trade and stuff like that, but I didn't really know much about the cultural dynamics of pre-colonial Ghana. Of course, I knew about the Fantes, the Ashantes, but I didn't really know much about the cultural dynamics of these different tribes. But reading this book really opened my eyes to a lot of things. One, about the Ghanaian culture, and two, about the slave trade. Now, I know I've read about the slave trade. I read about it, as a child, and watching it in movies and things like that. But the way that Yagyasi describes it in this book is, I got to a point in the book where I had to put the book down to think, because some of it is really heart wrenching. Like the details, like a part of the book, she talked about the fact that in the ship where the slaves were kept, the way they were stacked like logs of wood, where at some point, like, defecating on each other. And to think that this actually happened in real life, is really heartbreaking. And the way she tells this story also makes you understand, as someone who, as an immigrant, you kind of understand people who have become, like, for example, like African Americans. You kind of understand, and people living in the West Indies and South America. You kind of understand where they're coming from. You kind of understand their history. And yeah, it is just the emotional wreckage that slavery brought about to people, and specifically to the family that the story is built on, is just, yeah, it's a lot. I'm not done reading the book, but it's a good book, eye opening. So if you love historical fiction, definitely read it. And this book actually piqued my interest, and I was like, okay, I need to read something about history as well. And so I went to the library and I got this book. So this book talks about black convicts, how slavery shaped Australia. I live in Melbourne, Australia. And this book, I've heard about the First Fleet, and I know a little bit of the history of Australia. I mean, with the Aboriginals and the First Fleet and things like that. I know a bit of the history of Australia, but I didn't really know. I didn't know that there were actually people of African descent on the First Fleet. And this book does an expose on that. This book talks about the people of African descent who were on that First Fleet, talks about slavery, talks about how there was something called punishment by transportation, where you had people who had been shipped to European countries as slaves, and people who were working in the plantation in the West Indies, and how some of them were sent, exiled from places like Barbados, Jamaica to Australia. And it's look, this book is at some point I had to put it down, because the details in it were just so Yeah, there's certain things that you read, then it just opens your mind, and you're just like, oh my god, because when you put yourself, when you think about the fact that these were actually human beings like you, living, breathing human beings like you, and the things that they went through, and how, the yeah, it's. I'm still reading the book. I had to take a break because I'm like, this is a lot. But I think it's important for us to read and know history. It's not, sometimes I feel like the reason why a lot of people don't like to read history is because it exposes you to something that you'd rather shy away from. But the fact that you're shying away from it doesn't mean that it did not happen. It doesn't change the fact that it happened, right? So you're better off knowing than, you know, trying to pretend that it did not happen. And this book, I like the fact that this book sheds light on the people of African descent that were on the first fleet, because what it does is that it corrects the notion that there were no Africans on that first fleet. So yeah, interesting book. I'll keep reading it, but yeah. And then moving on, I decided to do some inner work. I like to, I'm all about inner work and healing from the inside and glowing from the inside. And so I picked up this book. It's called The Book You Wish Your Parents Had Read and Your Children Will Be Glad You Did. Now, if you are someone who is planning to have children, even if you're not planning to have children or you have children already, this is a good book to read because it talks about understanding the feelings, understanding the needs of your children. Look, I'm Nigerian, and I'll tell you for free. The typical African parent doesn't care about your feelings. Like, what is feelings? What do you mean feelings? What are you talking about? Feelings? What? How do you spell it? So feelings weren't really something that we talked about growing up. So, but this book makes you understand the importance of validating your children's feelings. It also talks about the fact that if you learn to do it for yourself, it will be easier to do it for your children, do it and to help your children do it. It also corrects the impression that parents tend to have about not accepting the good and bad emotions of their children, and helps parents tries to help parents understand that your child will not always be happy, and you have to be willing to sit in that discomfort because they're human beings like you, and nobody's happy 365 days a year. We go through the motion, we go through the ebbs and flows of life. So yeah, you have to be willing to accept that fact. You have to be willing to accept the fact that your child won't always be happy, and you have to be willing to go through those emotions with them. So definitely a good book to read. I'm still reading this. I don't have children yet, but yeah, it's really good to do some inner work. It helps you reflect on your own upbringing, reflect on how you were raised, so that you can correct some of the anomalies that probably took place in your own childhood, so that you don't inflict the same wound on your children. And finally, I picked up the famous The Nightingale by Christine Hanna. I just started reading this book. I've been hearing so much about this book on TikTok, and people have been talking about the fact that it made them cry. So I'm like, this book that is making people cry, I want to see what it's about. The first thing that jumped at me reading this book is the language. The language, I love the language. The language is simple, it's very easy to get into. You know how there are some books, some fiction books that from the beginning you're already like, oh my God, where do we want to start from? Because the language is just hard. It's hard to get into it. But I like the fact that this book is written, at least in the parts that I'm at, is written in the first person. And the language is also easy, so easy to understand and easy to flow into. As you can see, the book is still very new because I haven't really gone into it that much. But yeah, definitely what I'm going to be diving into during the holiday period. So I'll definitely come back and talk about it when I'm done. If I finish it, we'll see. Because there are very few books that I started and finished at once. I think one of those books that I know that I finished it, I could not put it down, was Purple Hibiscus by Chimamanda Adichie. That book is unput down able. If you agree with me, let me know in the comments. But that book is unputdownable. I did a short about it recently, and I'm like, well, that book just leaves me in awe. But yeah, that's one of the books that I know that I had to read it till the end. There was also the Secret Lives of Baba Shagi's Wives. I think it was Lola Shone who wrote that one. I also found myself, and because it was a small book, it wasn't, but it was actually a very good book. I enjoyed it, very relaxing. So that's why I finished that. But yeah, we'll see how the Nightingale goes. I've heard so much about it. Hope it doesn't disappoint. But yeah, let me know what you think about some of these books, the books that I've talked about today. And we'll see how we go with my kitchen table. Let me know your thoughts. And yeah, also let me know what some of the things that you like me to talk about on my kitchen table. But yeah, I'm excited about this one. Looking forward to it. If you got to this point, if you're at this juncture and you still haven't subscribed to my channel, if, we need to what you need to check what's inside your heart, because but if you haven't subscribed at this point, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel. And yeah, I'll see you again in my next episode. Okay, in my next episode, I'll see you again. Bye bye.